wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
A ní wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa, àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. I'm no kwa, Osinachi. One man, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi.
A ní wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa, àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. I'm no kwa, Osinachi. One man, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi.
wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa, wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa, àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
suffer fast. Not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. I'm no qua, Osinachi. One name, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi.
Yes, I can hear you, but it's very faint. Hello? Hello, Aduke? Aduke?
Hello, Joke.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Hello, admin. Can you hear me? Hello, admin. Can you hear me? Just so I know the sound is good.
It's probably...
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you.
Hello? Hello?
Good evening, Joke. You're mute. You're mute. Unmute yourself. Hi.
Hi, how are you? You look lovely.
Can you speak? Hi, Joke. I can't hear you, so okay.
Oh, why? Why can't you hear me? I've unmuted.
Okay. Can you speak
what
again?
else to do. I have unmuted.
Okay.
So...
Toyin, are you here? Hi.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay, yes, that's much better.
Okay.
Okay. It would have... So, Toyin is here. We're just waiting for Lawan. And here he is. Hi, Lawan. Hi, Toyin.
Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening, all.
Hello,
Happy
everybody.
to be here.
I'm happy that you're all here. Admin, should we start? You can just let us know in the chat. Okay, but anyway, while we wait for their confirmation, let me just introduce everybody to everybody. I'm not sure if everybody knows each other, although I suspect you all know each other's names. Below me to my left, I have Joke Silva, and below me, right at the bottom, I have Toyin Akinosho. And to my left, on top of Joke, as it were, I have Lawal Adams. And I've chosen, when Sahid asked me to put this panel together on, is Lagos more than a city of hustle and hustlers, the three of you's names just came to me, because I think that we are all alike in struggling to make a cerebral sense out of the city in which we find ourselves. And I thought that I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to say out our woes, our complaints, our hopes, our optimism, and off we go. Okay, admin, we're gonna start, I guess. Okay, so our conversation, so we remind ourselves, is around the premise that Lagos is more than a city of hustlers. There are book clubs, literary festivals, photo and art exhibitions, creative performances by theater groups, documentary film screenings. But the question is that people don't seem to know about them, or the people who do it's a very niche audience. And I'm going to start with Toyin. Toyin runs a blog called Book Artsville, and Book Artsville is supposed to be, and does a good job at, telling its subscribers about what is going on. What do you think the challenge is? We can't hear you. You're on mute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Hope you can hear me.
That's okay. Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's good to be here. Joke, Aduke, and Mr. Adams, yes. But what I think is the challenge now is that you can't be everywhere. You can't know everything, and there are quite a number of events that are happening that we don't get to capture. Not even when you have all the capacity, that's that. There's also the fact that you also require a bit of funding to, no, because you don't just put out a calendar. It would also be important for you to have, foot on the ground. I mean, and that I think is. But otherwise, if you like it, I mean, it's a very fascinating journey. And just before I leave, just before I, wrap up this particular question that you asked me, there's been an explosion. Bookerville started as, attitude in 1988 and became, Artville, in Daily Times in 1991, and then moved to the Guardian to be, Artville, and it was just a strip column. But Bookerville is a bigger, trying to do as, because a strip column, of four stories in a strip, one third of the newspaper, was a less ambitious idea of capturing what's going on. But this is more, Bookerville is more a calendar. I mean, more than just a calendar. It tries to also review and also one thing that I consider very important for everybody, also provide some kind of a psychoanalysis of the environment, a picture of the environment of culture. I guess I should leave it there so that other people can speak.
Okay, So I like what you say about the calendar, but I'm going to ask Joke now, and then also ask Lawant to respond. It's all well and good to talk about a calendar, but do people come to the events? How do people hear about the events? Because artists put a lot of time and thought and money behind putting events into place. But if there isn't enough of an audience, how, and in fact, even get enough of an audience, how do the audience hear about it? Because I think very much in my mind, and anybody please feel free to pitch in here, I really think there's a gap between the work that is being done and people hearing about it. And I think, and because of that, I think that's something that this panel would like to explore. How the work is being done. Yes, Joke, Lawon, is the work being done?
Yes, thank you so much, Adike. I'm very happy to be here and to be here amongst these incredible intellectuals who are doing work, in the space. Now, for us in our space, we operate in the theater space, in the film space, and in the education space for the creative economy. But I'm going to kind of focus on the theater space for now. Now, what I've noticed about the theater space is the fact that we are not running our plays for long enough. And that is a function of not budgeting well enough. And that is a function of not getting enough sponsors, all right? Okay. So everything kind of rolls into the other. Now, I guess also, so now, what do I mean by saying that we're not running for long enough? When we run a play for a month, let's take the theater that we are operating in now, the Glover Memorial Hall. The Glover Memorial Hall, give or take a couple, sits theater style about 720 people, all right? Now, 720 people over a weekend probably gives you roughly about 2,000 people, roughly about 2,000 people in a weekend. Now, if I run my show, whatever show it is that I'm doing, over the 5 shows, 2,000 people a weekend, in a month of 4 weeks, I've shown to 8,000 people. Now, if I show to 8,000 people in a population of 20 million, just Lagos alone, that's a drop. It's a drop. Exactly, that's a drop in the ocean. And invariably what tends to happen is that people always tell you that they didn't hear about it. And by the time they hear about it, the show has come down. Do you understand? Now, the thing is, I believe one of the ways of militating against that is to budget well enough to run the show. Let's say in the first instance, run the show for 3 months. See what kind of audience engagement we get after 3 months, and then stretch it for. And now, apart from then running at the weekends, we then need to push into running during the week. And in running during the week, who then are our audiences? Because a lot of times our audiences are people who are only free from Friday to Sunday. But then we have a very captive market amongst the schools. And I think we're not tapping into that market enough. Their schools, their homes homes where we're not looking at those, I mean, for instance, old people's homes, orphanages. I mean, there are just so many, there are audiences that we're not tapping into at the moment. And I'm hoping that we'll begin to do that at Glover, just to push the envelope a bit so that we get to that point where we are running one show for a year. That would be that would be incredible.
Actually, you made a very important point about audience development, and I'm going to come back to that.
Thank you.
Lawal, I'm going to ask you, the events you put on are not long-term like Jokers. Again, how do you get the audience? Do you feel that there's a gap between what you do, the talks you hold, the tours you do? Is there a gap between the work you're doing and people knowing about it? Because if we can just take that both yourself and Joker are out doing the work, Toyin is doing his best to get reports and hear about it. Why is there a feeling that there isn't really a cerebral sense to life in Lagos?
Okay, thank you, Jock. Thank you, Aduke. Can you hear me though?
Yes, we can.
I'm in and out. Oh, fantastic. Firstly, thank you for having me on this platform. It's a huge privilege to be on the same platform as someone as an icon like Jock Silva. And so I'm really happy to be here. And so straight to the point. I think with my experience, like, as you know, I just stumbled into tourism because of passion. So I still struggle with making the financial or the economic sense balance out with my passion for tourism. But it's important because I've got the capacity to experiment, so I can quickly see where the issues are. I think we get too engrossed in the project itself, which is trying to create something that is of value, or at least something that we feel that's of value. And we don't put enough effort into how do we market it, and then how are things changing in the demographics and all of that, to that we and the best part and the best way to attract this changing environment, this changing business environment. So how do we market it? Because it's at the last stage we realize, hey, how am I going to get people to fill this seat? How am I going to get people to come in? You're literally begging people in to just fill the seat. I'm not even thinking of money, just your pride to say you have an empty show sometimes. And we really need to get beyond that. And I think it's got to do with the values. If you cannot find if you do not know where exactly to go for people that share such values. I mean, take for instance, I've been following the progress of Global Court, how it came about and how Madam Joke Silva took it over and her partners and all of that. But that's because I have a passion for it. I've never met her, she's never met me. But I think it's a big strike because now it's off government. It's now in the hands of people that know how to manage it. But the other thing is that, take for instance, there was something in economics 2 days ago or yesterday that Lagos is the worst city, is the second to the last worst city. Who's going to want to come and watch, do tourism or do anything with that kind of reputation? So there's an issue, and I'm asking myself, are we asking government for the right things? Shouldn't we be asking them for, look, how do you bring us together as a platform and we're all marketing each other? So if somebody finished my tour, I can tell them there's a play starting in another hour if you'd like to join that, and this is what it's about. And when they finish that show, they can tell them that there's a nice boat going out at the marina. They could also do that, and then they jump from one thing to the other. Most of the people the strays that come into our facilities, they just Google and they say, okay, there's a cultural place not too far away from National Stadium. For them, it's even an adventure because I'm sure they're thinking, we will get mugged on the way there. But this is the reality we face. And I think firstly, we have to work together. That's the first thing. It's not just a case of, okay, come in, drop your flyers, maybe people will see your flyers. For the ones that are established, that is, there must be an active process whereby after they finish, there's something else for them to do. And that process, we must manage it. And that really is the crux of the matter. How do we work together for those that, not everybody shares our dreams, we just have these dreams and just a few people share. It's only when it now manifests into something big that's when everybody starts running. But we know it's got to be there. It's the crux. It's the basics of whatever is going on, whether it's in our films, it's in our music. There must be some uh, original information that that's going to grow from there, especially with our youth. You see that all their ideas are in different directions. But what if we give them the right stuff to start off with, and then they can build on that? And I get a bit passionate about that, but that really is my first sense to your question, and I think hopefully maybe more will come as we speak. Thank you, Adike.
Thank you. I think I want to go back to that. Your last comment actually ties in with Joke's earlier comment that I wanted to talk about with audience development, because I think audience development is something that we don't, excuse me, really do enough here about. In other countries, young people are exposed to cultural things on a regular basis as part of their curriculum. They go to the theater, they go to the museum. And so what happens if you have like maybe a class of 30 children in a class? Out of that 30 children, okay, maybe 5 would say, I want to be on stage. Maybe 2 would say, oh, I want to go and work in the museum. But the others will continue their progress. They will become professionals, they become workers, but they begin to learn at a young age that going to the theater is a good thing. Going to the museum is a good thing. When they see their classmates starting off at, small shows, local shows, fringe shows, they begin to support them. So that by the time that same class of youngsters who are age 8 or 10 and they're now in their 50s, and they have the ability to support their classmates in a well-meaning, donated way, it develops the work and it develops the audience themselves. And I think it's something that we really don't do a lot of. And I think it's a shame, because I think theater is not something that we learned from abroad. We did theater ourselves. And I think that's something that we perhaps tend to forget. We ourselves, as Yoruba people, Easterners, Northerners, all of us, there is a strong history of people coming together in a community and telling stories. And we've allowed that to die. But you see, stories are the way a community plans, speaks for its future, plans its future, and reminds the people about its young. Toyin, how are we going to bridge this gap between the audience, the young people, and the work?
Okay, I think number one, number one, I think that there's information out there, but it has to be put out in a certain way too. So in this day, in business day, in Arise, you do have segments that are, I mean, we're not just the only medium, platform that puts out information on the arts, but you have this information all over the place. But then, there's a way that the audience sort of prefers to capture this, and that's a very important um, assignment for us. Listening to everybody, listening to Mr. Adams, listening to Joke, the sense that I get is that my job is not properly done. I mean, I feel pretty much challenged.
I think that's a bit harsh, but yeah,
because if people really are going to your platform and they notice that, okay, there's an exhibition here on June today, for example, the calendar that we put out, we said, June 26th, you would have relay, and the same June 26th, you would have a play at Terra. If the kind of thing that Lawon is talking about, which is that, people don't even know, I mean, after they've been somewhere, that something else might be happening. he's practically saying, Tony, are you really doing this thing properly that people are getting it? So my sense is there's not enough. I mean, we need to, and people talk about audiences picking up their material differently now today in 2020
Mm-hmm.
than they were in say 1992, which means that
Even
I
20,
mean,
even 20,
whatever we
even
do with the Twitter, whatever we do with the social media, we probably need to do much more. It's it's it it is a funding thing, but then we've got to, before you even talk about funding, you have to have the strategy, and I think that is what we need to work on. Is something that I'm taking away here, that
mm-hmm,
I'm not being, for example, he mentions, I mean, the 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 issue around how Joke Silva got the um, eventually got the Global Memorial, but that was a story published in Bookertville, and he doesn't mention it, which means that we're not even marketing ourselves very well, So I think that media needs to, you know, number one, you can't run the this is going to happen. You can't run it only once. You have to run it regularly, and
mm-hmm,
you have to get the information. I mean, if you don't get the information about the play and start to put it out somewhere on your platform at least 3 to 4 weeks before it starts, then you probably have failed because Lagos demands to know early. So that's number one. Number two, if you organize those calendars very well and it reaches people, then you won't have the kind of situation we have today where certain weekends everybody is exhibiting. So there will
mm-hmm.
be 7 exhibitions. And then the following weekend, there's no exhibition or there's only one exhibition. I mean, this particular weekend, there are about 5 plays, and those plays are just this weekend. They are not going to stretch until Monday. And yet, 2, 3 weeks after, who says plays only should happen during the Leia festival or at the Easter? Why can't it be, you know? I mean, of course, the point that Jokem makes about this stretch this longer time, that will require a huge amount of funding. Mrs. Jacobs should know that. But I know she can raise the money. I mean, she's very capable. But I mean, it's a bit of a stretch because people struggle with even. I mean, there's a gentleman who does a lot of plays in Lagos and who claims all the time that he makes a lot of money from funding. But when you really get close to how much he supposedly makes, you realize that he's only hyping. That money isn't much, you
Yeah,
know.
it's not.
He would exhibit about 20 organizations that haven't chipped in something, including organizations like First Bank, and he might just have about 30 million. Doesn't mean that everybody is just dropping 1 million or 1.5 million. So there's also a funding issue. But let me limit myself to where I come, to the party. I'm not doing well enough. I've had you. We will find a way to ensure that Lagos gets to know early enough a lot of what is going on, and people can then take a decision, and that we provide that kind of information in the way that it reaches people. So you can't just publish and you are not very, 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 very very present on social media. You can't run you know um, an art column or a cultural information platform this year the way you ran it, you know, 20 years ago.
Angela, you're at the other end of the um, um, balance. You have an intimate space as opposed to Joker's large space. Okay. Now, what are the challenges you have to feel that, because unlike Joker's plan, which is to have, you know, at a minimum of a 3-month, 6-month run, your events tend to be daily. So how would you want the news about your event to go out?
Okay, so for me, it's really understanding where we have found ourselves is really understanding the market, and the market as it affects us specifically. I'd want to say here that obviously the market for a place like Glover is quite different to some degree for us. In the first instance, ours is a smaller space, so it makes it a bigger challenge economically to fill it and make and break even at the same time, because we have a smaller space. So what we tend to do is to use it as a multifunctional space, whereby we do arts exhibitions, we do talk shows, we do small events, we do boardroom meetings and all of that. Where everything revolves around its cultural relevance. Really. So for me, and like I said, at this stage, it's really to identify where the market is at. I mean, Lagos is big and everybody keeps saying the 20 million people. I haven't seen 20 million people in Lagos that are ready to come to my facility. I just want to know where to go to get those people that fill my own hall. And more importantly, I'm pleased enough to be my marketing agent, because it's really, this kind of business is by word of mouth. I can tell you, we've explored all the social media, and I realized that as much as people show like they're really into social media, when it comes to trust, it's almost zero. We've done things before that we advertise on social media, we didn't even get one person. It's word of mouth and, you know, so physical sharing banners and things, flyers, and that really gets people in. So people need to be confident about where they're going. I guess a place like Glover would already have that, because it's already an established area. And then it's also being backed by well-branded, well-known, respected people. But for us, because of the space we're in, we're saying we're marketing Lagos, we're doing history and culture. So the first thing that comes to mind is, shouldn't that be government's work? But what do we do if government is not doing it? Someone's got to do it, and we don't want our history and heritage and culture to just go down the drain. So there's the issue of, okay, so what's behind it? So there's so many things, but for me, it's let's even identify our markets. And whoever helps us to do that is doing a great job. It's extremely expensive to do your regular advertisements. It has also become increasingly expensive to even do the social media ones. I'm sure you know the kind of fees that our what do you call them now? Personalities, social media personalities, what they charge. Influencers charge now.
Influencers.
They would have taken all your profits home even without you making it, and you're wondering, okay. So it's a challenge, but of course we do know that the people are out there. But how do we get to them? Abigail, you and I have been on a program of even going to hotels in Lekki and DI, where we know that, and everybody, they keep telling us that they've got guests that want to do something, they don't know where to go or what to do. And it's so hurtful when you hear that every day. And you're like, how do you get this information across? And to all these places, people go and eat in very nice restaurants. And because the market for me is, there are those that are prepared to book for over a week or a month. And there are those that are just spontaneous. They just wake up one day and they say, hey, what's happening in Lagos? What's safe to do? What's available? What works with my timing? I have a quick meeting here and I want to fill up the time doing something else. And I think we need to critically look at all those opportunities and aggressively go towards it, not just a blanket, the 20 million people in Lagos who are to be able to fill a hall. It doesn't necessarily work that way.
I think you made a very, you've brought to attention something that's very interesting to me. Lagos has a huge amount of restaurants. Any kind of food you want to eat in Lagos is available. But the downside of that is as if all there is to do in Lagos is eat, which is not true, right? Which is what this panel is about. There's more to do in Lagos than eat, okay? And that again is back to what do we, I was talking to the director of the Alliance Française, and he was telling me in the last year, they've had 200 performances of different types of work by different artists. That's 200 shows that nobody knows about. I mean, I go there often. I haven't gone to see 200 shows. I was also talking to the director of the Goethe Institute. She sends her apologies. She was supposed to be here, but she fell ill this morning. But she told me they have a funding program. At the beginning of this year, they had about over 150 people who were applying for their grants. So they give out the grants, they do the work. Who is the audience for that work? How can that work be seen? And I think there are just so many ways that this sector could be able to plug in and let us know what is going on. What are your thoughts, Joke? Let's start with you.
Several things occurred to me when my colleagues were speaking. The first one was, I don't think, Zoe, you need to beat your head. You need to beat yourself so hard, because I think, there's only so much that you can do, to be honest. You're just one organization. Do you understand? And it just occurred to me that maybe what we do need to do is get someone like you that has the clout within the media, and whether it be print or to aggregate all these people, aggregate them, so that when I have a show, because it's something, let me digress a bit. It's something that we used to do when we were putting up shows at the National Theatre. I didn't go around, trying to get myself into it. I just had one point person who was my media person, and all they then had to get us on television, get us on, get our show in all the popular media. And I think maybe that's what needs to be done again. We need to have one center where we go. We go to you, we come to you, and then you have maybe a particular influencer or some influencers, because there are constant shows that they are advertising and things like that. Their fees will then come down, because it's a matter of number. You understand? And so, I think that's something worth exploring. That's number one. Number two is the fact that when we're talking about 20 million people in Lagos, the idea, my sense of saying 20 million people in Lagos is the fact that we haven't even gotten 1 million people out of that 20 million into our spaces. And we must. That's when I feel that we have arrived. When we get that 1 million into the space. And I think part of the problem is the fact, part of it's like Tony mentioned, and Lauren to mention, it's funding, number one, but the thing is, if we budget properly, I think sometimes we don't budget properly. I'll give you an example.
Artists.
Yeah, these are the producing artists, the houses that put up the shows. For instance, now you were talking about this young man who does shows. I know who you're talking about. And you see, I remember one of his advertisements was that he had more companies on his banner than the Nigerian. But when you talk to them and you find out they're giving out, I think it's a travesty that a place like Central Bank is giving out 5 million, is giving out 1 million, He's giving out 1 million for a show, or I think they give about 5. Why? It doesn't make sense. And so invariably what tends to happen is that the standard of work is a lot of the times is like a showcase. So if I budget properly, budget my rehearsal properly, budget my advertising properly, or do something that another colleague of mine did, which was a collaboration between the producing house and the media company. If you remember, Ada the Country, the advertisement for Ada the Country was over the roof. It's always over the roof. They always, their advertising is like second to none. But I find it really sad that, you know, when all that money is spent, we only had 8 shows. Yes, 8 shows that were filled every single day, every single show. But after all that work, after all that 8 shows, it doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make sense, really.
So it goes back to what I was saying, which is this, that it's developing the audience in various ways. We started by developing them through banks, going to banks and doing shows in banks, so that whenever we then said we had a show, those bankers trusted our work enough to come to our show. But whether we like it or not, I think that's the next frontier for us, even for exhibitors. You are absolutely right. How can you have 5 shows this weekend alone, and the next week thing? I think it's a waste of resources, whether human or you know, human capital, you know, intellectual, everything. It's a waste of resources. You know, there may be a need for us to kind of understand everybody's calendar. Maybe, I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there. You know, maybe that's a way of sorting out, solving our issue. Because if there's a show going on in TerraCulture, there's a show, maybe TerraCulture starts, or whatever, whoever the shows, we start one after the other, so that everybody gets to see the shows, you know, and then they continue. The budgeting must be done in such a way that these shows, because if they don't continue, people don't get to see them. And same with exhibitions.
Exactly, because I'm going to say here that what you just said, I don't think there's anything wrong with shows, with there being many shows on at the same time. But the problem is, as you say, they don't stay on for long enough. So as much as I love the theater, I cannot go to 4 shows on one day, right?
Exactly, but you can't.
Yes, but at the same time, as you say,
even 4 shows in one weekend, you won't.
I won't, really I won't. But at the same time, is the solution to be, okay, I'll start on the first Monday, you start on the second Monday, you start on the third Monday? Is that a solution?
Maybe.
Is it, again, would the audience say, okay, I'll go to a show a week? And I do think that your point is that the shows don't go on for long enough, because even if they are rave reviews and they're published by Toyin, by the time the reviews come around and you think to yourself, oh, okay, I rather fancy going to that, the show is gone. And you now have to wait and hope it will come back. And if it comes back, it mightn't be the same show, because it might be the same show, but it won't be the same cast. And it's like, oh, what happens? But again, this is a different problem from what Lawan faces, who tends to have, you tend to have one-day shows, like you have a talk on one day. So how do you get people to know about that talk, come to that talk, enjoy it, and know that, okay, it's not going to be repeated? Because what I'm doing is I'm having an author who's coming to talk about his book on this day. I have an exhibition happening on that day. Those, for instance, can't go on for ever and ever and ever. So again, it's back to, 20 million people. Do we think there are enough people to come to this work? I guess that is also what this panel is asking. And here I'm playing devil's advocate, because the brief of the panel implies that in Lagos, we really don't have time for this kind of affairity. All we just want to do is make money. Is that true?
Well, can I quickly come in? Can I quickly come in something that Lawan's space? It's just an idea that I'm throwing out there. I don't know whether it can work or not. What if we kind of tried to have a talk. Probably Mondays is never a good day to do anything. So Monday is your free day to plan. So Tuesday, maybe Tuesday is your day for talks. Wednesday is your day for exhibitions. Since you do one day shows, that's what I'm saying. So that, you kind of fix it in the audience's mind that on this day, if I go to Lawan's space, if I go to Lawan's space on a Tuesday, I will meet a talk. If I go on a Wednesday, I will meet a this. If I go on a like that, it's fixed. It's fixed, and it's probably an experiment that we should try. Try it for probably a year and see what happens with your audiences. That maybe by then, then people, you then have developed the audience, the audience who like talks, know that on this day, okay, you will find me at Lawan's place, on the day when I want to go see an art exhibition, on this day, you will find me here. I don't know. I wonder if it's worth trying.
What do you think? Sunday is the day that you have for talks, isn't it?
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, it wasn't a deliberate thing like she has put it now, but it's sure, it definitely is a great idea that we'd like to explore as well. We did it for convenience, if you remember, for Sundays, because it was convenient for us, it was convenient for quite a number of people that were bringing. But like she said, actually designating days that is locked in the minds of the potential audience, that on these certain days that they're sure something will be happening there, and we aggressively and continually put that out, then it becomes something. So definitely it's something that we definitely will be exploring. Thank you very much for that, Madam.
You're welcome.
Joy, what do you think?
Yeah, well, what Mrs. Jacobs is saying really is basically programming. I mean, programming is one way that ensures, well, I mean, at least at the theoretical level, programming means that, TerraCulture has readings every Wednesday, and they do have readings. For example, if you go to Bogobiri, I mean, that every Thursday is an open mic, and it's packed, so that's an example, but it also doesn't mean that it necessarily, in a sense, Lagos, the Lagos culture scene is continually a work in progress. I know, for example, that Roving Heights is almost always a Sunday thing, but it's empty for most of the time that I mean, if you are going to have a reading at Roving Heights, you have to do a serious word of mouth, even though they supposedly have a social media handle. And readings are, of course, as you know, readings aren't even yet part of the agenda.
Okay, so you have to mark it.
So yes, programming is important. I guess if most cultural spaces, have a program agenda, that is that, at this time we do this, and this time we do this. For example, the Muson concerts, tend to be, I guess the classical concert tends to be Sunday afternoons. And I think they have an audience. I don't know. But yes, this is very program thing that Dr. says it's something to consider.
I do think so.
But I want to quickly say that there's the audience. I mean, the audience actually has grown. I mean, seriously. And the audience that is us, I mean, this age group, is really going out. I mean, I know, for example, that if you go to an art exhibition, you will stick out, and there's a whole number of 20 to 30-year-olds, and they tend to enjoy themselves in my thinking. And when I look at them, I see that that's probably how people of this age were also looking at us maybe in 1990 or something. So yes, maybe the audience is there. It's just capturing them. And programming is a good way. Yes.
Absolutely agree, because I do think the audience is there. And I do think that the audience does spread from, as you say, from the early 20s up to even older than us. I think that Lagos does have a community of people who do more than just think about looking for the money. I think there is a community of people who do understand and wish to delve deeper into our cultural and literary traditions. And I think what you said about the young is important, because I mean, as I all of us here are, on the other side of an older age that we won't say right now, but young people, you mentioned Bogobiri. There, it's full young people on when they have their open mic shows. Again, it's that thing. It seems to me from what we've been saying, that everybody seems to be working in silos. It's as if there isn't communication across the genres. What do you think? Lawan, Joker, what do you think?
Thank you, Adito. Definitely, this is what I have observed. And the reasons are obvious. When someone has spent so much time and effort and finances to gather an audience or potential audience that can regularly tap into to fill their shows, clearly they will not be too eager to share that with anybody, unless there's a bigger picture like what we're proposing here, whereby look, it's a market for everybody. People only have as much desire to watch a play as they have to get into cultural stuff, as they have to eat food, as they have to do other things that gives them the entire feel of going through the city of entertainment. So it's and I keep saying this, that it's for us to identify these markets and put our efforts, instead of just everybody doing the same thing all over again, put our efforts into channel it into how we tap into this. Like you said, and I mean, I quite appreciate what Mr. Tony has been doing. And just like Madam Joke said, I don't need to beat yourself too hard on the fact that the job hasn't been done yet. It's a very fluid, this Lagos market especially, it's a very fluid thing. You're talking about demographics, you're talking about the age, you're talking about different things that interest people, for them to decide that, look, this is what I want to do, or this is the direction I want to go. So I mean, we just have to be intentional about how we get into the market. It's a huge market. Even beyond that, a lot of people will even come from outside Lagos because they feel that it's where it's happening in Lagos. I see on the internet almost every day whereby people in Abuja or Port Harcourt, as much as they're proud of their cities, they still feel that all the action is in Lagos. And
that's true.
And personally, for me, I think it's about the way we market Lagos. And I always say this for every show I do, that stop looking at Lagos like you're looking at a New York or London or Lisbon. We have a completely different story. So we're going to have completely different people and wanting to do different things. But we need to understand what those things are for us to be able to really grab that market. It's not enough to just say, I've got my 20,000 database of people that I think would serve me week in, week out. It's obviously a bigger market than that when we're looking at 20 million people. There are those that can afford it, there are those that can't. There are those that can only afford half of it. Sometimes you see these young people coming to shows, just like Tony has said, and you're wondering where they even get the money from. I can understand the passion, but it's because of the passion they have that they'll even take the little cash that they have to do. And then the people that you're targeting, that you think, oh, these are the people that I think they can afford it, they've got a flair for these things, they don't turn up. So it obviously means that we're doing something wrong. We're not understanding the markets that we're really trying to grab. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's, and Joke, I saw you nodding away here. Would you like to respond to that?
Well, I'm not sure that I was okay. I was nodding to the fact that yes, a lot of you target a particular cadre of the society and believe that they're going to they're going to attend your shows, and then it turns out to be those that you were totally not expecting. Yes, I was not nodding to that, but I was also curious about something that Lawan said, which is about the not comparing Lagos and New York. I mean, Lagos to New York or London. And I'd like to understand why. Now, okay, I won't compare Lagos or London in the area of, let's say, the spaces. There are more spaces. They have more spaces than we do, that run different cultural activities. But I think we can use them as a template to be able to drive what it is that we want to do. If I'm looking at the theater scene, for instance, it's them that I'm looking at as a template of for what I want to try to do. I don't see why I cannot run a show for as long as they've had the Lion King. I don't see why can't, because it has been proven from what they do, and even from what India does as well in the theater space, that the longer you run a show, the more money you're going to make. That's when you're going to, because theater, and I'm speaking about my own space now, theater is so capital intensive at the very beginning. It is so capital intensive, and it is when you run it for a long period of time that you then start making your money back. So that's why I said I would like to understand why you're saying, we can't use them as a template.
Well,
okay. Well, I think
do you want to take that, and then we'll go back to Tony.
Okay, so that I don't get into trouble. For me, it's just from
yes.
our cultural sense of what has driven people even into going on tourism, going on historical tours and all of that. Take for instance, how did even theater start? It was I don't know. I'm just saying from my little understanding of history. People enjoyed it because then when the colonialists came, they came with the theater. It was fun, and our elites developed a liking for that, and ultimately that developed into something that found into our social structure. But is the story still the same now? It's just the way you try and market museums and all of that. Who wants to go? Well, these kids, they really want to learn about how some white people held you down, shot your ancestors and all of that. The important thing for them is how they're going to move on beyond that. They're way beyond that. That's why I say the need for it for us might be slightly different from that of these other places, because their stories are different. And I'm not saying absolutely that you shouldn't take it, but there's a lot to also consider, considering the way that we have evolved, that we need to now begin to try and reason out better in understanding the markets we're trying to. Well, I mean, are we saying that it's only for people that know about heritage or tourism or theater? There must be the people that you are going to entice to come into it as well. And why would they do that? What's in it for them? What's backing up all of that? There must be something else beyond just to wake up one day and they decide they want to go to theater. It's not. I'd say that it's not necessarily in our DNA. And when I say this, I'm not talking about a few 100,000 people that fall into the category that we already know. I'm talking about the other 2.21 point something million that have no clue about this, that they don't know how much it could be soothing for them, that it could be better than hanging in a beer parlor and nothing over there. Or different ways that makes it, okay, this is what else I could do. But because they haven't never had any inclination towards it. And I've seen that in the past. It is when we're able to market our things ourselves, from our films to our music, it's the passion we have for it that entices other people and makes it what it is. And for us, at least in this industry, we're not about charity. We must be able to make money out of it. And it's a huge challenge if we are not able to tap into this right customer basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Twain.
Well, I'm happy that Laon himself said he didn't want to get into trouble, but he then went and dug himself into more trouble because the cultural context that he portrays are not exactly um, the way it is. To start with, I mean the uh, Olu Jacobs and Joke Silva, when they were running a particular play, and I remember that very vividly in 1985, 1986, and that play was taken in just, well, if not as much audience as Ogunde was taking in next door, they actually had their crowd. They did have, and this is close to 40 years ago, but that's that. But I also understand that, if you if my dad dies or my mom dies, and I happen to come from Ekiti, you're likely to come to Ekiti, to help me bury my dad than you come to a play that I invite you to. So I also understand that, and there are times that I say that part of the job of theater lecturers should be to, when they are trying to teach, theater, to teach that, cultural context, that if you're a playwright, I mean, sorry, if you're a playhouse, your market is also funerals. Your market is also, e-commerce and co. So that's also there. But the challenge that I have with Lawan's thing is that that thing that he talks about Europeans has been here for 60 years, and it has taken time. It has, gelled, more people go, and so there's actually a market, and the reason why the so-called 20 plus 1 million people that he says are not very keen is that there's a whole lot of Lagos issues on his own, the challenge of poverty that is not there in the UK. I mean, basically when you've done well for yourself, that's actually when you think about those other things. I was hoping that that's what he would say, but again, how did theater start? Since he has decided, and since we're in public, and we need to set this record straight, Chief Ogunde knew, right, that there was, the whole idea that people came for rituals and festivals in the market square. And he thought, okay, if we actually put a gate, we actually can do the same thing that they are doing in that ritual traditional setting, but take money. And that's it. That's the beginning, in a sense, of modern Nigerian theater. And I'm saying that these Jacobses actually also, despite the fact that they were speaking Oyinbo, they actually contested as far back as those years. So really, there's a market, really. And, I can understand, that maybe the same economics, cannot necessarily be properly situated like that. But there's a market that can be had if there's proper programming. And that's the programming now we're talking about, the stretch, how you do it more and more. That's what Joker is saying, really. I mean, that the more you do it, the more people hear of it, the more they come. You really have to test that model, I think. I mean that, do we, because I remember, that in the late 80s, there will be just about 20 of us in the National Theatre, and Richard Moffett Damijo and Funchal Alabi will perform, and it's just those few of us that will know about that play, That, so yeah, but I also know that Lagos has gone beyond that. It's a work in progress. It could do better, and why can't we test the kind of models that we're talking about? So really, yeah, there's been there's been a history and it's grown. And the cultural context are not the one that, that Mr. Adams puts, are
No,
not the way he put it. Yes.
no,
That's
no.
that's the response that I want. But for as far as this panel is concerned, I like to respond simply that this is not just a city of hustlers. There are quite a number of people, and look, there was something that I used to notice when I was in Chevron, and which is why I said that I was frustrated about the kind of challenges that Bukadville is having. I live a cultural life, so I will leave the office, and go to another exhibition on VI from Lekki, before I go home. And when I came back to the office, my 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 colleagues will say, "Well, you're always doing this. Why don't how come we don't know you? You go see plays, you go to that sort of thing." So they want to go. So there's always been, and seriously, I had left Chevron for 15 years. So that's always there's an audience. It's there seriously, and it can
Okay.
grow. We just need to test those models.
And
That's what I want to say.
And I think as well, it's important to say that it's not just theater. Okay, so it's more than theater. It's an audience for book readings, audiences for literary festivals, audiences for open mic, audiences for visual art. It's not just theater. It's like, and I think that it comes, and I think it's very interesting in your response that you repeated the same thing that this panel is discussing. 15 years ago, people were complaining they didn't know. We are in 2022, people are still complaining they didn't know, that they don't know. Lawon, that's one of your challenges, isn't it? People say, "Oh, you did this talk, we didn't know." You see, and I'm trying to. It's what I said earlier. We know people are doing the work. People are doing the work, but the word is not coming out. Now, it's not that the work is not good enough. It's not that the passion and love is not being put into the work. It's that gap between the city being seen as a city that is just harsh and devoted to mammon and not focusing on cultural things, and the dichotomy between that and the fact that in fact there is a niche of people, quite a lot of people, who would go to a theater show at least once a month, if not every week, who would go to book readings, who would go to talks. So how do we tell the world that, yes, we are cultural, we are literary? It's not an odd thing to be in Lagos and be an arty kind of person. And is it wrong in a city that at the same time is mired in so much poverty? Is that the disconnect? Do we think that things of the minds somehow that people who are in more economically deprived circumstances, perhaps they don't deserve their own version? Are we that harsh as Lagosians? What are your thoughts? Any, mini, miny, mo.
No, I know that certainly we're not hard, but I mean, Joke is the hardcore Lagosians.
Yes, I am a hard colleague. But I think, but so is education. So when we talk about, if we look at, some of the things that are going on, like in CCA, for example, the Center for Contemporary Art, going, just piggybacking on what Twin said. Now, Oida Oida Fake, who is the artistic director of the center. She's gotten some incredible programming going on. But I think also the location of because of the kind of history that the Center for Contemporary Arts has had over the past 15 years, they've developed, an audience has developed that has come back since COVID, since the lockdown and, and some of the crises that the center had. And so, there's no time, they had an exhibition recently, an exhibition, a German photographer, and the place was packed, but I think the location had a lot to do with it, in the sense that by a lot of educational institutions. And the educational institutions have been marketed to understand that this is a space for them. So a lot of students always come to the center, knowing that they have access to a library, one of the biggest Nigerian libraries, so they can do their research there. But then they also then get to see all the exhibitions, and they attend the talks. And but I guess also one of the things that they do is aggressive marketing. Their marketing can be pretty aggressive, and I think that's one of the things that I would take away from them. I personally agree with Mr. Adams. I definitely don't market enough. I focus so much on the work that I could do better with marketing.
Okay. Lawan, what do you think? Do you think?
The question again.
Okay. Do you think Lagos has allowed itself to just sink into its reputation of, oh, we are here to make money. No, we don't care about those things, and people who are economically deprived, too bad for them. And is that the right thing?
Yeah, clearly that's the challenge. And like I'm going to dig back into what I even said before regarding comparing cities. There are, in all these other foreign established cities, you have grants being thrown at you, sponsorship being thrown at you everywhere. And there are clear distinctions as to how this applies. So those that know that they have to go for sponsorship, they attack that, and they know that they're offering something free. So it attracts the kind of people that, they don't have the money to pay, but they're discerning, they appreciate the work. And then the reality is that the challenge we're having, why theaters and places will open up and then they'll die, is that if it is not economically viable, it's going to crash. There's just no way about it. You can only get a sponsor for so long. If it's one man that is passionate about it while he's MD of one bank, once he moves on, that money dries up and you're back to square one. Worse for you when you've developed an outflow that has become so bogus that even your normal operations can no longer carry it. And it's not easy. Every day, whether people fill your seats or whatever, you're paying staff, you're running water, bills are coming. Even the same Lagos State government to be dealing Lagos State government establishments, it just doesn't stop. You have generators running at 800 naira per liter. I mean, you have to be honest with ourselves. It just isn't about passion alone. It must be. So if Lagos decides that, look, it's a bit hostile, I need to make money from it, I think it deserves to do so. Because if people want to continue to see these things, they're going to have to pay for it. At least find somebody that will pay for it. And that's where we really are. If they're not going to pay for it, they now should gather and say, you know what? Don't give us this. Just help us make sure that these establishments run in the city. And we're fine with that. Because it does a lot more than just helping us. It's a place where we relax. It's a place where we connect. It's a place where we do all sorts of things. And I mean, even people that work in this industry, I mean, it's a lot of work that they do. They don't get compensated well, obviously. So you can see that it's still the passion, but how long will the passion drive you for the employers and the employees? So really, we must be able to make something out of this. Of course, the sponsors will do as much as they can, but it always dries up. So, and if it's not economically viable, it won't stay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are coming to the end of our time, so I'm just going to ask if there are any questions in the chat. And if anybody watching would like to ask any questions, can you put them in the chat? And while that is happening, I ask our panelists to be thinking about their rounding up thoughts. We have one comment in the chat at the moment. I'm gonna switch off my video so that I can read it without you actually seeing me up my nose. So this is from Kade Kofola. He says that the fact is that there's really a disconnect between art practitioners and the enabling environment to practice. The enabling environment is government's responsibility, along with general security, provision of grants, coordinating the activities of practitioners and their institutions. This is where art councils working in conjunction with tourism boards come in. Unfortunately, in this environment, both are almost non-functional or dysfunctional at best. And I think that's quite an insightful comment that has actually in a way sums up quite nicely what we've been saying. That gap between government support, private sector support, and the work of art councils, do we think that has contributed a lot to inhibiting the amount and the quality of the work that should be done? Joke Lawan, what do you think?
Unfortunately, I don't know. Unfortunately for me, I'm so used to working outside of government. I'm not very good. So apart from when one was on the board of the Arts Council, and that was that's a story for another day. I've never felt their impact. That's the honest truth. I've always done. My organization has always worked outside of government, so I wouldn't know what their impact is. I wouldn't know.
Okay, so I guess that's
I guess maybe what if I was to answer if I was to respond to what the gentleman's comment, then what I would then say is that okay, if there's a disconnect, then maybe we the practitioners need to let them know what our needs are and get them back. Because obviously at one time they were functioning. They were functioning at some time, at one point. I mean, that's why they were set up. So if they're not functioning now, then we need to then work with them to help them to function. And
okay.
That would be my response.
Okay. Sorry, what do you think?
No, well, I just,
okay,
because
if I may also add.
Go on. No, go on, Lao. I mean,
if I may also add, I'll still repeat it again, which is what exactly do we want from? They are challenged, and I'm not sure how much of the market they even understand to be able to prefer solutions or things to work. I mean, it's hard enough living in Lagos, the hardship in Lagos, and then what are you trying to promote? So clearly it's coming from, the individuals, the practitioners. And so at the end of the day, we would have to, work these things out and tell them exactly what we want. And it's not always about money. I always dream about a time whereby people come into the airport. At that very international airport, there's a stand that promotes Lagos in all its facets, from its food to culture. You could even have some of these so-called stars. A Burna Boy, go and take picture when we know that he's traveling. Go and take picture there, and there'll be people that will travel on that day just because they know Burna Boy is going to come through that airport, and they get opportunity to. And imagine him now telling them that he's got a show in this place that they watch. There's another drama show in this other place that they watch, and all of this, and all these things ties neatly. We cannot. Some things have happened already, have evolved. We're crazy about Nigerian music, about movies. We need to begin to wrap ourselves around these realities, because that would be like piggybacking on their back, which would be a lot more cheaper for us. So sometimes not always about money. It's just about them being deliberate about what the solutions to this situation is. So if the Lagos, and I don't know what it will cost like a Lagos state government to put a desk at that airport and do all of this. I don't know, and the benefits and that's just one idea. I mean, I'm a bit radical about my thoughts, but I mean, lots of things could come through that way as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I know I am not very excited about government involvement really from historically, but I also agree that a lot of things are not necessarily about engaging government in terms of funding and all that. But the question I really want to ask is not even about this. I want to ask Joke if what she's thinking about, and I know that we're not talking just about theater, we're also talking about art exhibitions, and we're talking about readings, and we're talking about music, But for theater, if the model works that she's suggesting, she's proposing, does it mean that you might not actually need sponsors who can place break even themselves if it so happens that the audience actually shows up? I mean, I I I I imagine that Ada as a country, I mean, I watched it. I mean, that's a very smart way of doing Mamma Mia, you know, and it was some kind of entirely Nigerianized Mamma Mia that nobody you wouldn't even think about, except someone who has an idea of how some of those, different stages in the Mamma Mia evolves, or plays like that, that sort of thing. And because it's very, very well grounded in the cultural context, you can understand, I know that the last Mamma Mia that was imported, they were trying very hard to fit it in, but this was this didn't call itself anything and it played so well. But does it mean that
You mean Ada the country? Ada the country.
Yeah, Ada
House
the
of
country.
Ada the country. Yeah.
Yeah, so are you saying that if we ran for 3 months, you would not need Cadbury, advertising or First Bank, I mean, sponsorship? Is that the thing? Because that's the kind of thing that Lawon really wants to know, whether, these things themselves can on their own pay for themselves, I mean, visual artists tend to.
I honestly believe that it is possible. I think it's getting the right kind of material. There was a proof of concept of that several years ago when we did a play at the Muson, where we got investors, not sponsors, investors to invest. It was a group of investors that were put together. We teamed up we were the artistic arm of a partnership. And so the partnership were the ones who went to raise the funds, and they raised the funds through investment. And so by raising and by the time we finished running, we were able to pay all the investors back from the show. Now, but what happened was the fact that because we were trying out a concept. What it was that we ran for a month, consistently for a month. And by the time we came down, we had hired Muson, Ajib Hall. So by the time we came down was when the word of mouth had then spread so much that people were then coming to the theater wanting to buy tickets. They were coming to the theater wanting to buy tickets, but we had come down. And there were other shows in the theater that had booked the theater. So So I guess that one of the things that Tony is now saying is that, okay, prove this with Glover that you're in control of.
Well, I guess that's a fair comment.
And I guess that is because Glover is a multi-purpose space. So we will be having readings. We will, I mean, you know, Aduke, we discussed it. Exhibitions about Lagos itself. You know, and we've actually worked out how. I think one of our untapped audiences, I honestly, is school children. Because and that's the way, like you mentioned at the early stages, that's the way to actually develop our audience.
Absolutely.
We need to tap into that. And, you know, it's actually much easier to get organizations to sponsor school children to come. And you can do it in collaboration with government. Government,
Absolutely.
They have the transportation. They can bus the children to wherever your location is. Bus the children there, and then and another organization pays for them to attend whatever it is that they're coming to attend. So exactly. You know, I think that's another thing that we need to explore a bit more.
I think just as you mentioned that again, I think that's an area of a possible collaboration with Lawan as well, because his establishment is called Loving Lagos and focuses on the history of Lagos. Okay, so 1 minute each to round up. Lawan, I know that your video has dropped. Do we still have your sound? Do you want to say something? If not, Joke and Toyin, your last comments, please.
Okay, let Tony be the last one to speak because he can round us very well. So for me, I would just like to say that Lagos is definitely more than the hustle and the hustlers. Lagos, there's so much intellectual work, there's so much cerebral work going on, there's so much creativity going on. Yes, I think for us in the creative economy, one of the things we do need to realize is that we need to work very, very closely and collaborate very closely with the marketing aspect, with the marketing arm of our industry. Once we can get that right, once the marketing is aggressive enough, I think the rest of the world will realize that we're more than hustlers and more than the hustle. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Toyin.
Yeah, I've seen the audience grow. I've seen for each and every one of the genre. As a matter of fact, the readings part, you know, where you have book readings, wasn't like this, you know, 20 to 25 years ago. I mean, that's one part that all these book clubs all over the place, you know, we tend to get stuck in some kind of narrative once we pick it up. Oh, Nigerians don't read. Oh, this, you know, that sort of thing.
Yes.
I think we need to interrogate ourselves more and do probably more research as a people. You know, I mean, there's a whole lot of the things that we've discussed here. The only part that I can see that had a bit of research is the one that Joke is saying about the investors, about that 1 month trial, which means that there's something that they've done, you know. I mean, but you don't get that, you know, very regularly. I attended some thing at the Lagos Book, fair, you know, recently, you know, and they were talking about reading spaces. But a lot of the people in the audience had their own book clubs, and you know, I mean, there were over 10 people talked about their own book clubs, and they are not the regular book clubs that I thought that I knew. You know, so I mean, there's a whole lot of market of intellectuals where whether we're converting that into, you know, into financing properly, I think that's a different thing entirely. But the question we were asked to answer is there a flourishing intellectual class, a cultural class? I think there is.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Toyin, Joke, and Lawan for their comments, their insights. I hope everybody watching has also enjoyed it as much as I have. I think we've had a very robust conversation. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Mm.